Behind the Red Line, Episode 22, The Double Life of Emily Sander. Zoey Zane. Small towns are not supposed to have big secrets. In a place like El Dorado, Kansas, everybody knows everybody. You know who drives what truck, who's late on their rent, who works where, who's having problems at home. And in 2007, one of those familiar faces was Emily Sander. 18 years old, a college freshman. Soft voice, bright smile. The kind of girl people describe as sweet, quiet, polite. She went to class by day, hung out with friends, worked a part-time job, lived that small town, low-key life. But at night, under a different name, through a different screen dash, she was someone else. Online, she was Zoey Zane, a nude web model with a growing following, a girl in front of the camera instead of behind it. Two names, two selves, two worlds that most people thought could never collide. Until the night she vanished. This is Behind the Red Line. Episode 22, The Double Life of Emily Sander. Zoey Zane. By all accounts, Emily Sander was normal. She grew up in a regular Midwestern family, went to high school football games, laughed with friends in parking lots, worked on her homework at kitchen tables. In 2007, she enrolled at a small local college. She was living in a modest apartment, sharing the typical freshman mix of freedom and uncertainty. Her friends knew her as shy at first, funny when comfortable, artistic, sometimes lost in thought. She wasn't wild. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't the cliché. She was just Emily. But like a lot of young women, she wanted more than what her town offered. More freedom, more expression, more money. And the internet gave her that. At some point, before late 2007, Emily started modeling online. Under the name Zoey Zane, she posed for adult photos and videos. The work was private, remote, digital. No clubs, no physical contact, just a camera, an internet connection, and strangers on the other side of the screen. For Emily, it meant extra money, a feeling of control over her image, an escape from small-town expectations, a way to explore a more confident, bold version of herself. She kept it secret from most people. Friends had suspicions. A few knew. But in her everyday life, she stayed Emily, the quiet freshman with big eyes and messy hair. Online, she was Zoey, smiling at the lens, owning the gaze that so many women have taken without consent. But dual lives are fragile. all it takes is one man who doesn't respect boundaries to shatter both. El Dorado wasn't the kind of town where strangers blended in easily. But late in 2007, a man named Israel Mireles was staying there, working at a local restaurant. He was older than Emily, intense, charming in a surface way, known to be controlling with women, described by some as off. He noticed Emily. What he saw was a pretty young girl, friendly, trusting, curious. They began spending time together, hanging out, flirting, drinking. To Emily, he was just another guy, someone to talk to, someone to walk from the bar with, someone ordinary. To him, she was something else, an obsession, a fantasy, a girl he wanted to control. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving, a slow, cold night in a small Kansas town. Most people were at home with family watching leftover TV, eating leftover food. But Emily went out. She met friends at a bar, a local place where everyone knew the bartender, everyone knew the regulars, everyone recognized the faces at the door. Witnesses remember her wearing casual clothes, laughing, drinking, talking with Mireles. He was with her that night, close, possessive, hovering like a shadow. As the night went on, people saw them together at a table, leaning in, talking. Around closing time, they left the bar. Together, she walked out on her own 2 feet, under her own power, and no one in the world ever saw her alive again. A few minutes before midnight, one of Emily's friends saw her leaving the bar with Mireles. They got into his car, drove off into the cold Kansas night. To everyone else, it looked like a girl going home with a guy she knew. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. But somewhere in that night, between the bar and wherever he took her, something happened. A conversation turned, an argument started, a refusal made, a boundary drawn, and he decided she wasn't going to leave him alive. We'll never know every word that was said, but the evidence paints a picture we can't ignore. The next day, Emily didn't show up. Not for plans with friends, not at her apartment, not at her job, not on her phone. Her roommate noticed first. Texts went unanswered. Calls rang straight to voicemail. Her bed hadn't been slept in. Her friends got a sick feeling, the kind you get when something is wrong, but your brain still hopes it's not. They started calling around, "Have you seen Emily? She left with Israel last night. Did she go home with him? Did she text anyone?" No one knew. The last confirmed sighting Emily leaving the bar with Mireles. After that, silence. By that afternoon, her family was informed. By that evening, police were notified. Within 24 hours, Emily was officially missing. Detectives quickly honed in on the obvious question: who was the last person to see her? Answer: Israel Mireles. They brought him in, asked him simple questions. When did you last see Emily? What did you do after the bar? Did she leave with you? Did she make it home? His answers changed. At first, he claimed he barely knew her. Then he admitted they'd hung out. Then he said she left on foot. Then he said he'd dropped her off alive. Nothing quite lined up. Timelines shifted. Details blurred. The red flags were immediate. At the same time, police began to hear whispers. Somebody had found out that Emily was also Zoey Zane. Adult sites were pulled up, her images discovered. Suddenly, what had started as a missing college girl case was now being shouted across national headlines. College student/web porn model missing. The media storm that followed turned her life into a spectacle. But underneath the noise, investigators were quietly building a case, and their eyes never left Mireles. Police searched the motel room where Mireles had been staying. What they found was disturbing. There were signs of a violent struggle, bloodstains, items knocked over, bedding disturbed, signs someone had been hurt, badly. Forensic teams moved slowly, documenting every inch. It became clear that whatever happened to Emily had not happened miles away in a dark field. It had happened right there, inside the room of the man who swore he barely knew her. But by the time police connected these dots, Mireles was gone. He'd disappeared, packed a bag, got in a car, and vanished over the border. He ran. Guilty men run. 6 days after Emily vanished, a driver traveling along a rural Kansas highway noticed something in the grass off the shoulder. A shape. He pulled over, walked closer. It was a body, a young woman left in the open, partially unclothed, bruised, exposed to the elements. The scene was brutal in its simplicity. No attempt at burial, no disguise, just discarded, like trash. The medical examiner would later confirm the worst. It was Emily Irene Sander. The cause of death: violent, deliberate, personal. We're not going to dwell on the condition of her body. What matters is this: she didn't die in some mysterious accident. She didn't vanish to start a new life. She was murdered, and the last man to see her alive was already out of the country. Once Emily's body was found and the connection to her online persona confirmed, the case exploded. News stations ran with the story: college student killed, secret life as porn model. Zoey Zane murder. Did her adult work lead to her death? They printed her nude photos. They replayed her videos. They dissected her double life. The tone over and over. Sensational. Salacious. Judgmental. Few asked the real question. Why was a young woman's exploration of her own body used to shift blame away from the man who killed her? Emily was treated less like a victim and more like a scandal. But behind the headlines, her family grieved for their daughter, the girl they knew as Emily, the kid who watched cartoons, the quiet student, the friend who giggled in class. The media focused on Zoey. Her parents mourned Emily. As the media picked apart Emily's double life, law enforcement focused on one thing: find Israel Mireles. He had fled to Mexico, using family connections and the chaos of the border to vanish into another world. For months, the case became a cross-border pursuit. U.S. Marshals, Mexican authorities, Interpol. They pieced together information, relatives' addresses, old acquaintances, phone records, whispered sightings. Every lead pointed the same way. He was hiding. He was being helped. He knew the law would come for him eventually. And then, finally, it happened. He was arrested in Mexico. Extradition took time, legal barriers, diplomatic red tape. But step by step, he was dragged back toward Kansas. Back toward the place where he had taken Emily's life. We will never know every detail of what happened inside that motel room. But patterns from other cases like this one tell us something. Men like Mireles are often driven by entitlement, rejection rage, desire for control, obsession. When Emily went with him after the bar, it doesn't mean she consented to whatever happened next. At some point, it's likely she said no in one way or another. No to what he wanted. No to how he wanted it. No to letting him cross her boundaries. And he responded with violence. He turned a living, breathing human being into an object he believed he could destroy and discard without consequence. Because in his mind, her secret life as Zoey Zane made her less deserving of safety. But he underestimated 3 things: science, persistence, and the love of a community that refused to let Emily disappear quietly. Back in Kansas, the trial began. Mireles was charged with capital murder, aggravated kidnapping, and related crimes. The evidence against him included witness testimony placing him with Emily, forensic evidence from his motel room, blood samples, The timing of his flight from the country, his changing statements to police, physical signs of a violent attack. The defense tried to suggest that Emily's adult modeling life had somehow invited danger, that she may have gone willingly with someone else, that there were other possibilities. But the jury saw through it. The pattern was too clear. He was the last person with her. Her blood was in his room. He ran immediately after her disappearance. Her body was found tossed along a road. The conclusion felt inescapable. The jury deliberated. When they returned, the courtroom fell silent. Mireles was found guilty. Guilty of murdering Emily Sander. Guilty of taking an 18-year-old woman's life in a moment of selfish brutality. He was sentenced to a long prison term that will likely keep him behind bars for the rest of his life. He will never walk free again. He does not deserve to. In life, Emily tried to separate her identities. Emily, the student, daughter, friend. Zoey, the online performer, the model, the persona. But in death, the world tried to erase Emily and focus only on Zoey. That's the cruelty that so many sex workers and adult models face. The moment something happens to them, their work is used against them, as if choosing to show your body means you chose violence, as if a second life means the first one doesn't count. Emily wasn't killed because she was an online model. She was killed because a man decided he had the right to own her. Her double life didn't lead to murder. His choices did. Emily's murder changed the conversation in small ways. People began asking, how do we protect young women living double lives? How do we handle cases where victims had adult careers without shaming them? How do we shift blame from the victim to the killer where it belongs? Her family has spoken out about who she really was: caring, smart, funny, shy, creative. They've had to watch her image shared across the world in ways she never chose. But they've also fought to reclaim her memory. Not as a scandal, not as a porn star murder victim, but as Emily. In life, she had two names: Emily Sander, Zoey Zane. Two selves, two worlds, both real, both hers. But in death, she's not a character, not a headline, not a morality tale. She is a young woman whose life was cut short by a man who believed he could erase her. He failed. Her story is told. Her killer is caged. Her name, both of them, live on. Emily deserved to explore who she wanted to be, without dying for it. Every woman does. This is Behind the Red Line. Episode 22, The Double Life of Emily Sander. Zoey Zane.